All right, everyone. Welcome once again to Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited for another awesome episode today because we're going to be talking with Zach Montroy from the Intention Collective about scaling businesses with healthy teams. Zach, welcome.
Thank you so much, Damon. I'm excited to be here, excited to get to chat this afternoon.
Yeah, it's going to be fun because I was going through your information, prepping, getting ready for this, and there's a couple things that you said that really hit home to me. It's it's a lot of business leaders think they either have to choose between pushing culture or growth, and you say, nah, you can do both of that, and you can keep your teams healthy while scaling. So it's going to be fun talking about this today.
Yeah, I can't wait. We're very passionate about that for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Zach, we always like to start out by learning more about how you got doing what you're doing today. So, let's just start back a ways and tell us kind of your progression into figuring out that you want to be this um, executive coach, organizational people, leader, team developer, and helping people like that.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep the story concise. But so I grew up in a pretty lower middle class home and knew if I wanted to go to college, that meant I needed to go to work as a teenager. And so in Pennsylvania, you could go get a work permit at 14. And I thought, well, I'll go to the mall and get a job. It's what all the cool kids do. Got a job at a toy store. So I thought, as a 14-year-old making $4.50 an hour, like hit
Mm-hmm.
the jackpot. Really interesting set of circumstances. At 16, got the opportunity to be an assistant store manager, and that required
Woo.
me going through leadership training. Yeah, probably some not great decision on whomever's part that was, but I had to go through leadership training, and so that meant watching some VHS tapes. As a senior, I had finished high school early, so I only had one class during my senior year, so I got to work full time. They gave me my own store as a
Oh,
store
wow.
manager, which again, crazy. Why would you do that? Give a 17-year-old a store.
Wow, that's awesome.
And my first job, they told me I needed to fire the entire staff. And I was like, wait, what? How do you do that? And the advice I was given, oh, you should just bring them all into a room and fire them all at the same time. Someone is stealing. We can't figure out who it is. So just fire them all at the same time. And I remember thinking,
Oh
like,
my, and you were 17 years old when they
yeah,
asked you to do this?
yeah. And firing like grown adults at this point, too. And I'm like, this does not feel right. There's something
Wow.
about this is not right. So I mean, it was just a gigantic dumpster fire, but worked really hard, tried to be as nice as I could, and also like meet goals. In college, worked full time, and probably for the most toxic leader on the planet. In fact, one of his pieces of leadership advice was you need to sit in a higher chair than everyone else so that they know that you're the leader. Um, Ended up
Oh my
getting
goodness.
fired by him. Found out he was he was embezzling money. I found out about it, confronted him, was walked out. And so for me, that was, I think it was like 22 years old and really a crisis point of like, leadership sucks. Like, this is
Yeah.
not what I want to do. But then had the opportunity to work for some really amazing leaders and was given some other opportunities to lead, but got really amazing mentorship, was given opportunity, but was invested in and was given a coach, who, I thought at that point, I'm in my late 20s. I know what I'm doing, and really helped me understand I didn't. And I had a lot to learn and needed to grow in emotional intelligence, and, got to lead some amazing teams, was in an operations role. So got to lead all of staff for some organizations and really put strategy to the vision. And about 6 years ago, was given the opportunity to get to do that with a bunch of different teams through consulting, and really have in founding Intention Collective really paired together how do we scale and grow an organization, and at the same time develop exceptional leaders who are leading those teams and leading those companies to a place of health and of employee well-being, where every person on the team understands with great clarity their unique ability and genius, and how that should be used, how that can be used to grow the company and really fulfill and meet the mission and vision of where the team is trying to go. So that's probably a really long way,
No, no, it's
good
super
story,
cool,
but
dude.
yeah.
Super cool, super cool. And we're gonna get back to a couple points because this is Ibod. I could totally relate to this story. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And then he says he's waiting to meet that coach of mine. And I'm gonna tell you that really is a key turning point when you find that mentor, that coach, that person that can really help you see the other side. Because man, you had some pretty crappy experiences at 17 years old, having to fire people. I can still remember when the first time when I had to do that with a lot of people, and I was in my early 30s already, and it was super gut wrenching, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that had to be quite an experience. And then having to turn around and building, and not working out decent after that part of it, but then having this toxic leader in college. I mean, at that point, you had to just be going, this is not, where are the real people at? Or is this a dream, or what's going on? Or is this really what it's going to be like?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it was really this crisis of, if this is what leadership is about, I'm not signing up for that. So I just want to go be a doer, do some work, and avoid leadership at all costs. I don't want to be around leaders. I certainly don't want to be a leader. And I mean, that's where we self-protect and build up all that armor, because if I do this, or if I put myself out there, I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to fill in the
Mm-hmm.
blank. But yeah, so then it's taken years to sort of dismantle that. And I think for me, it's now having the empathy to understand, why do some people show up to work every day really protected and not
Yeah.
willing to give their whole hearts to the work? Well, it's probably because they've been hurt in the past.
That you made a point there that I think really is awesome, and probably why it makes you even more effective is you've got that perspective from what really stinky leadership is like, that allows you to really put yourself in the place of people that are really not ready to put their themselves into what they really are doing and get into it with the team like they could because of those experiences. So, oh
Absolutely.
my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is just going to open a Pandora's box of questions, I can tell. So, I'm just going to go right into it. So, when you're in this in a company, you're talking to people. I mean, what are some of the things that you have to do to try to open up these people? Because some of these people are just like cross arms, I've
Yeah.
heard it before. Oh yeah, here we go again, the
Yes.
flavor of the month. I mean, what are some of the things you have to do with the teams and the leaders of those teams to get that to the point where they go, wow, maybe this really is going to be different?
I think it always starts at the top. And what I mean there is modeling vulnerability, and the willingness to build trust has to start at the top. It doesn't really work if you flip it the other way, because if we are asking people, on the front lines to be building trust and be vulnerable, but leadership is not willing to do that, you can't create a safe environment for people to function in. So I think in one of the things that we do when we start working with teams is we don't roll out the work to the entire company right away. We start specifically with the owners. We start specifically and almost exclusively with the leadership team, because oftentimes there's a lot of stuff that they need to work on and they need to figure out, and they have to start owning and the team has to see that they are willing to do the work before it's ever going to catch on, before anyone is going to actually believe this is something worth doing, something worth trying, and it's not just going to be another flavor of the month. But it has to start. I mean, that has to be modeled, and not only modeled, but really truly believed at the core of the senior leaders of any team for it to take hold in the organization.
I'm just going to let that sink in a minute. That was so good, man. That was so good, because I think this is 100% what doesn't happen in a lot of companies. Is they say, hey, we're going to do this, and they just assume that the owner, the founders, the CEO, the executive team, or the whatever the highest level leadership team is gonna, they're all together. And myself personally, we went through this with a client just and it took us over 6 months and a lot of meetings for us to just clarify the mission and values of the company. And I'm not talking, but it's off-site 3-4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Off-site 3-4 hours, and because you really don't have that true engagement amongst that core team. But when you get it, you start to feel it.
Right.
And when you feel that, and that's why people thought we were crazy when we started. And I'm not great at this, right? But we started. We knew we had to start somewhere.
Right.
And we knew that we had to feel what we were working on, because once you feel it, that helps you to supersede a lot of other negative things, because we're in this together to do what we really should do. And
yeah, what you're talking about is connectedness, right? As
yes,
humans, we're hardwired for connection.
yeah,
And I'm not saying this with research backing me, but I don't think you can trust someone without being connected to them or
yes,
having some sort of connection with them. So if you're going to work on mission, you're going to work on future, certainly you have to trust one another, and you're never going to get to trust without connection and vulnerability with one another, or whatever it is that you come up with is not going to
yeah,
end up being meaningful.
yeah, exactly. And like you said, you have to be vulnerable enough all the way through in the executive level to be able to recognize that we're not perfect, or recognize that we're human, that we are learning and trying to be better and modeling it, because
Mhm.
otherwise nobody believes it.
Right. And I think in that's such a piece of leader. I think vulnerability is such a concept in leadership that most of us were never taught. Probably going back to family of origin. Certainly that's true in my case.
Oh
We're
yes,
taught that vulnerability is weakness. We're taught that it's disclosure or crying at work. And that's not vulnerability at all. I always go back to Brene Brown's definition of vulnerability. Vulnerability is uncertainty. It's that feeling of risk. It's that feeling of not knowing, and yet showing up with the willingness to be seen and put ourselves out there. And in leadership, that's a really powerful, I think, display of we're here to get this right as a team. It's not about me being right.
yeah, yeah. And your example from a while ago, when you had a leader in college that said they sat in a higher chair than the others, is it just, that is just so, well, it's a high sign of toxic leadership, but just a calling card sign, when you, all the way from self-appointed parking lots to, whatever it is, corner offices, or whatever the things are, that not necessarily just having an office on the corner, but those kind of things. So as you're starting this journey with people, you're working with this executive team, and they're starting to get some of this.
Mm.
What are some of the realizations or some of the comments that you hear back from them?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest ahas that we see are, I think for most teams this is true. people are doing their best, right? They're coming to work every day. I think by and large, most people on our teams are doing the best that they can. I think for most leadership teams, one of the big ahas is if I'm making that assumption that people are doing their best, but we're not getting the results that I wish or desired, it's probably on me, not on them. It is probably because we have not been very clear about who we are, about where we want to go, about how we're going to get there, about the contribution I hope to see from you, in the investment of where I'm going to invest in you, what I hope to see in return, the commitment to having, tough, hard, tricky conversations. I think that there's most of the time a big realization that, there is a high bar and high mantle that comes with being a leader. And if I really want to see results, I have to be willing to do the work. And that's not fun. It oftentimes is not fast or easy. And I love the saying, embrace the suck, because sometimes that is what it is in leadership. And I think if truly transformational teams and exceptional leaders have the foundational understanding that we're here to serve the work, we're here to serve the people, we're not here to be served.
Yeah. Oh, just think about that. We're here to serve the people and serve the work. That's the way leaders should do it. It's so. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, sorry for interrupting. I was just going to say, the minute we believe, consciously, subconsciously, said or unsaid, that we're here to be served, or that it's about us, or that we've arrived as a leader, is the nanosecond that we need to get out of leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are scary people to work for.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, we got a bunch of comments in here that let's just hit a couple of them quick here. Shane stopping by. Nothing like the realization that your job is easier than your staff. Let's see, nothing like the realization when you take a leadership that your job is easier than your staff. Life-changing moment. All right, cool. It's interesting. Got to change the cultural identity to make it better, from Nathan. Thanks. Yeah, that's good. And then this, look to thyself first. This is something. I mean, there's even been, I can't remember the person's name now. One of the famous SEAL guy that wrote about it. He says, it's 100% on you. Failure is 100% yours if you're a leader, no matter what. It's 100% you. And you just made me think of that, because it's exactly right. It's someone I'm going to be talking to that about with a leader or CEO that I'm going to be talking about like this week. It's like, listen, if someone's not performing it, eventually it comes. Yes, there can be some extreme cases where someone is totally, they're checked out, whatever, not even, they don't even tend to do anything. But that is such a minute possibility in life that you have to assume that you haven't done something and continue to try to do what you can do. And that, I just love that. The other thing you said too that was awesome is when we start saying the word vulnerability, some people think soft, pushover, something like that. But it's not the case. You said tough conversations. And I think that's the real learning that some of us have to make, is that vulnerability means we're able to share yes, we aren't perfect. Yes, we are new to this, and we also then get to share our expectations of people and hold them accountable for what they do in a human, with good intentions, right? Or good human, being a good human, being a good human,
absolutely,
right? And it's not that vulnerability does not mean you're going to be a pushover in any shape of the word, sense, form, nothing. You can still get great things done.
Right. I mean, it's a commitment to being curious, right? To showing up and realizing I probably don't have all the information here, right? So I'm going to get curious and dig in, and going back to that in Brene Brown says as well, we with the commitment to getting it right, not being right. It's so interesting, especially when I think about vulnerability. Someone came up to me one time, we were teaching on vulnerability, and they're like, okay, I'll have Kleenex in my office and I'll like try to cry more at work. And I'm like, that is not vulnerability. That's not what
Yeah.
we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It's not disclosure. I mean, I've met a lot of leaders who are, disclose a lot about their personal lives and are not vulnerable at all with their work. And I've met a lot of leaders who are very vulnerable with their work and disclose very little about their personal lives. It has nothing to do with disclosure. It's about being curious and about being empathetic and humble and having a focus on, devoted to the well-being of other people. And that means you lean into hard conversations. That means that you're curious and that you're courageous. Vulnerability is, I would say, probably the strongest mark of courage. I mean, I name something that you've done that's courageous that didn't require a tremendous amount of vulnerability. Like, I've never had
Yeah.
anyone be able to answer that question.
Yeah. Well, it means you have to be willing to realize you aren't perfect. You have to be willing to do the things, try to do better and better to be better, because you're never
Yeah.
going to be perfect.
Right.
It's
Right.
so great. So great, man. So when you talk about going in and helping people really scale businesses with these teams, we come back to, we're going to be pushing for growth, and we see burnout, or we're going to be working on culture, and we're not going to really be doing growth as much. You talk about getting them both, and kind of explain the framework and how that happens.
Yeah, I think you have to get really, really clear on what it is that we are going to be committed to doing, right? And I think that starts with, I love the saying, you are perfectly designed to get the results that you are achieving. What's the design of our organization? What is it that every person on the team, does every person on the team understand with great clarity what they're responsible to do? Responsible for? Do they have the autonomy and the resources to do their jobs well? Are we investing in them? Are we keeping track of the right metrics? Do we know with great clarity and certainty? I love Chris McChesney's that idea of leading versus lagging indicators. Profit is always a lagging indicator. What leads to that? What is the fuel behind our economic engine as an organization? Are our meetings, is the cadence of how we're holding one another accountable and what we're working on, is all of that, where it needs to be? um where are we going? Why are we going there? What's in it for the team? How are we going to get there? What's the vision? What's the long-term play here? And are we really reverse engineer, and is that doable? The leader who has $1 million company in 5 years wants to be a $5 billion company. No one's going to believe that. So chart out a course that is doable for your team. And then we start to reverse engineer a plan and start working in 90-day sprints that, we're painting with great clarity what's going to get done. And when people can make that, connection and understand how they contribute to that, we end up having a really strong organization. And then we start to work on, what's the ethos of the environment? How are we operationalizing our core values? Do we have people that we're investing in from a leadership perspective? We're cultivating an environment of problem solving. We use a methodology called system and soul. And
Yeah.
it's a framework and operating system that really helps business leaders prioritize the systems that are going to move us in the right direction, while at the same time investing in the heart and peopling side of our company and organization.
Very cool. Very cool. Because I know that you see a lot of leaders that are focused on systems or people, and you really do need to be focusing on both as you go forward. So, as you're doing this, can you recall specific client challenges without obviously referring to a client, but that were like, this is really cool what I've seen happen here, and kind
Yeah.
of before and after, or how they've got through it, or just some of those experiences would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a number of experiences, but one client in particular, we started working with them, and I mean, they had grown a good and healthy company, but the weight that was on the owner's shoulders was getting to the point where they were getting to the point of experiencing tremendous burnout and
Oh.
resentment, and the people on their team couldn't, they really sort of hit this leadership or this growth lid as an
Mm-hmm.
organization. And when we went in, I mean, one of the big things that we helped them do was figure where are you going, like what's the ultimate goal here. You have some really qualified people on your team who are not empowered to lead. You really are kind of being the lid on the ceiling of your company right now. What does it look like to loosen control and provide clarity and provide autonomy and really empower your team to lead and really help drive um, understanding of what's most important and how their contribution is going to help you get there. And so in 90 days, they went from having no leadership team to having a fully functioning leadership team.
Wow.
They went from not having goals to having clear, specific, measurable goals, every person understanding their contribution. And I mean, it was like jet fuel was poured on their company. And I remember at the end of the 90 days, they ran into a huge problem with their sales pipeline. And they felt like, man, we've made all of this progress on how we're running. And I would say if they had not done that work, that event would have probably annihilated a lot of what that company was and where they had grown to. But they were able and positioned to tackle that problem with great clarity, with certainty, with vulnerability and courage. And I mean, in a month's time, basically went, from having $10,000 in their pipeline to having over $1 million in their pipeline, because they were able to focus on the right things. They were able to put the right structures and people in place to get after the most important issues in the organization. Whereas all of that would have fallen on the owner's shoulders, and
Wow.
probably would have just walked away from it at that point.
Yeah, and this is one of the things you talk about. At certain points, businesses will get to they'll get to a point where they need to be restructured. And I don't mean from a we're firing everybody and starting over or anything like that, but just rethinking about, like you said, the owner in the beginning has a tremendous load because they've got to do a lot of everything. And as the business gets bigger, they do need to be developing that team and passing off the baton on certain things all the way through to be able to allow that company to continue to grow. And that's where it comes back again to metrics. So if I'm going to pass off to you that the sales role today, Zach, that we're going to, we know you're going to know what success looks like for you, and that's what we'll talk about. We'll talk about problems, and to allow that leader, now that leader is going to do something else that is going to help the organization to continue to grow, rather than I can only work so many hours a day because I've got all this load and it takes all my time and there's no more time.
And I think that That is, you are exactly right. And that is very profound. And yet it requires a lot of courage and a lot of vulnerability. And I think, what you just said there, what then do then we find another area to focus on that's going to help grow the company and move us towards that destination. I think there can be a lot of fear in that, right? Like
Oh yeah.
I've gotten really good at this thing or these things that I do, and this grew the company to this point. And, I mean, one of the biggest fears in the workplace is fear of irrelevance. And I think
Mm-hmm.
every founder, every CEO goes through that. And, you get to that point where it's either you hire someone who's better than you at that area, and you hire, as Dan Sullivan would say, you hire the right who's and let them figure
Mm-hmm.
out the how, or you make the decision to cap growth and stagnate as a company and as an organization.
Yeah. And and when you do that, the fear of irrelevance, I think you said it well there. That you and if you don't see that, if you can't, and that's why I think coaches are really helpful in this situation, because like you said, I've been in this business for 10 years. I've been grinding like this, doing
Mm,
everything. What's going to happen if I pass all this stuff off? What am I
right.
going to do then? And to help them see what that looks like and how they are just leveraging those people's knowledge and skill set to be able to do more
Right.
with that business rather than somehow becoming irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good stuff. Well, Shane had another good question here. The personal cost of being a leader. Yeah. Now, I think I don't know when he's in the last part of this. We are gagged, often cannot explain or tell our side of the story due to personal confidentiality. Yeah, I think there's times when leaders are put into situations that are no doubt challenging, and it is. It's not for the faint of heart.
No. No. And I mean, I think even kind of going back to what Shane just said there, you've probably heard this a million times too, just the leader who's like, you just got to trust me, right? I can't tell you everything that's going on in this situation. You just got to trust me. And I mean, I've sat on the other side of those leaders and I'm like, you have done nothing to earn my trust. I have zero trust in you. There is $0 in the trust bank account.
Yeah,
And you're asking me to trust you you're withholding information.
yeah,
Absolutely not. There's nothing, there's no trust here. So I think, John Gottman says every opportunity is either an opportunity to betray trust or to build trust. And I think when we think about that as leaders, every opportunity that we have with our team is either an opportunity to be building trust, to be putting money into that bank account. And there's nothing that we can do that can add a big deposit. It's very small deposits over
hmm
time, but there are those moments that take, the gargantuan, withdrawal out.
yeah,
And so I think we have to be really careful about that. Like, I'm asking you to trust me. I can't give you all the information. And hopefully we've done the work of building trust with them that they can say like, okay, I know Zach's trustworthy. I can trust his character. I can trust what he's done in the past and trust that he's giving me all the information that he can right now. Or they're saying you got nothing and I don't trust
yeah,
you.
yeah. It's like you're just feeding me a line
Right.
to get me to do what you want me to do, or do
Yeah.
the
Or you're just saying that so that you don't
yeah,
have to have the hard conversation.
yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you just got to be building that trust all the time, every day, as
Hmm.
much as you can, because there will be times when you do have to draw on that account.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Now this is David. David mentioned something here, which is really um, this is something I think a lot of founders have trouble with when they first start this. They can hire some very talented people, and they should have trust in those people, and they're hired to do their jobs. Uh, but they have trouble letting go. They have trouble letting go of that.
Hmm.
It's hard for the people to do the jobs they can and innovate. But I got to believe as you're working with people and doing what you're doing with this executive teams, you're helping them resolve a lot of those challenges. Those leaders do that.
Well, I mean, like you like you just said, and I'm sure, I mean, you do this in your work. As a coach, you get to kind of step back and say, why are you, what's going on here? Like, why are you micromanaging this person right now? Are like, do you realize you're micromanaging them, or
Yeah, that's the
is
first thing.
something
You
that was
realize it.
done that has you've lost trust? Like, you just can sort of like call the it's sort of like that buzzer,
Yeah.
the game that has the loud
Time
buzzer.
out.
Like you get to like, yeah, if you hit the buzzer and say like, let's have a reality check here of what's going
Yeah,
on, and then you can talk through it. Because I mean, yes, there's implicit trust, but like trust and vulnerability build off of one another. It's sort of like rebuilding a Jenga tower. And I think when you have a coach, when you have a good coach, when you have a good consultant who can come in and say, all right, CEO, you said you need to transition out of sales, and that's not a switch that we flip, that's a transition, but you're kind of holding the transition back. Do you realize it? And what do we need to loosen control here? Where do we need to provide better
that's
clarity?
great.
What's going on? We get curious.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. So as you're going forward and helping companies do this, you gave us a great example about a company with found they were working on a lot of things and their backlog was low and they were able to turn it around fairly quickly. What are some of the typical scenarios where you see how you're helping people offer the most benefit?
I it's pretty qualitative to me, and I'm definitely more of a qualitative guy than I am quantitative. I think when every person on the when you can say we have 100% right people in the right seats on our team, and they are all leveraging their unique genius for the good of the company, and they feel like we're investing in them. They know that we care for them. They care for us. We just have this environment of continuous learning and growth, and trust is pervasive. I think the results come, because that's not a
Mhm.
comfortable environment. That requires a lot of work. That requires a lot of vulnerability. That requires a lot of attentiveness. That to me is success, when every person understands with deep clarity how what they do contributes to where we're going as a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
Because that's what's required in order to grow and scale. Otherwise, it's not sustainable, it's not healthy, and it's gonna come back, it's gonna dip back down.
Yeah. Yep. How much how much of the challenges that you see coming into clients is because they don't have the right people on the bus?
I will say often. um, and I think oftentimes they don't know that they don't have the right people on the bus,
Yeah.
and the people on the bus don't know that they're on the wrong bus. You know, I mean, we've seen some great people go like, "Hey,
Oh, great people. Yeah.
thank you for providing this clarity. Like, this is actually not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. How do we help you leave well? How can we sort of
Yeah.
bless you in this transition?" Like, every place is not for everyone.
Yes.
And there are seasons too. So again, clarity is our friend. Clear communication is our friend. I've never heard anyone say like, "Oh, that leader communicates too much," or "Oh, they provide too much clarity in this organization." Like, I've never heard that said. So I think when you get to clarity, people begin to say like, "Yeah, I would love to be here. I would love to contribute to this," or, maybe this isn't the right place for me. And then we start to say like, who is on the team? Are they in the right seats? And are we going to be vulnerable in having those conversations with one another?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious because I over the years and listening and watching people help companies like this, or helping companies myself, you know, you spend a lot of time. And if you look at some of these systems that talk about, building great businesses, you can look at an EOS or something like that. And I often go, yeah, it's great to, kick things off, but if you don't have the right people on the bus, we're trying to drive a bus with bicycle wheels on it, and it's
Right.
not going
You
to do
have
work.
people with their rear ends in like 12 different seats. Like
Yeah.
that's not going to work.
Yeah. And, I really think that when we talk about what we're talking about today, part of the clarity that you're bringing with people is like you said, Damon, you're maybe not in the right seat, and this seat over here might be really good, or maybe you need to get on a different bus. And that is so powerful because it allows the rest of the team, and if there's somebody else that comes in where Damon was before, it allows us to move forward so much farther faster.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's pretty arrogant of leaders to think that people just need to be here, be owners, act like
Oh yeah.
owners, and
Yeah.
I expect them to be here for the rest of their lives. Like,
Yeah.
number one, if you expect them to act like an owner, then you need to treat them like an owner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and secondly, you're not General Motors. You're not
Yeah.
giving someone a pension for working for you for 30
Yeah.
years. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and that I think that goes to serving people, right? I'm going to serve this person for as long as they this is the right place for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be better, and I'm going to be better because of our time together. I think that requires a lot of humility and a lot of care for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. You know, up here we've got a NFL coach in Seattle, that Pete Carroll. A lot of people, yeah, he does a lot of things not so great, but the one thing that he does, he develops people. He
Mm,
develops them, and when they go to another team and become a head coach or a superstar, he's super happy because they're moving into the place that's better for them at that point in their career. And I think when we can adopt that kind of philosophy in a business, like you said, it helps people exit gracefully into
mm,
something that's more a better fit for them,
yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than it goes down a negative path, and we can't do it. It's just that realization, that and helping them understand, and helping them find the thing that's better for them.
And I mean, I think fast forward to your retirement speech, right? I want people to say, I hope that they say, Zach invested in me. He was generous. I'm better because of the time that I got to serve alongside of him. He cared for me. He challenged me. But ultimately, he, was focused on my success, not his success. And there's a lot of leaders that will not ever be said of. And I
Yeah.
mean, I hope to the core of my being that those words would be said about me because of me, my investment in other people.
Yeah. So cool, man. So cool. Well, Zach, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it's been
I mean, I
fun. You
I
ask
can
amazing questions.
I can feel how you would be helping teams,
Hmm.
and just love it. Love the energy, love the passion. So if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can find our team intentioncollective.co. We're on LinkedIn. I have an amazing team that publishes a lot of really great resources. So you can check out all those free
Cool.
resources on our site and find out a little bit more about what we do and how we help teams there.
Nice. Nice. Well, Zach, thanks again. I really enjoyed it. And I want to go back and say, Shane, thanks for the great comments. Good to great. We were talking
Love
about
it.
getting the right people on the bus. Ibod, thanks. He's talking again about trust, a two-way equation. Got to build that trust. David, we run into this all the time. Founders are visionaries, CEOs run companies. That's a tough transition for some people to make, for sure. Then we get back. I just want to make sure I got everybody. Nathan, thanks for stopping by. Thanks everyone for leaving the comments. Thanks everyone for listening. Even if you're not leaving comments, if you want to reach out to Zach. His website there, intention.co, intention collective. intentioncollective.co. Sorry, I got that wrong there, but
no worries.
Reach out to them at Intention Collective, and we will be back again. And we're out for now. Zach, hang around, and we'll end up here.